All right, everyone, welcome back. Get ready, because today we're taking a deep dive into sourcing in Vietnam.
Yes, it's a hot topic right now, and for good reason.
Definitely. I mean, this country is really becoming a major player on the global scene.
Absolutely. Vietnam has been steadily building its economy for the past 25 years, and the results are impressive.
Yeah, the sources we've been looking at describe Vietnam's growth as like it's running on rocket fuel.
Haha. Yeah, it's a pretty apt description. We're talking about consistent GDP growth averaging around 6% annually.
Wow, that's incredible. So what exactly is driving this phenomenal growth?
Well, one key factor is Vietnam's young and vibrant workforce.
Okay, I'm listening.
Over 60% of the population is under the age of 35.
Wow, that's a huge demographic advantage.
It is. This young generation is tech-savvy, eager to learn, and ready to contribute.
It sounds like a dream for businesses looking for a skilled and motivated workforce.
Exactly. And it's not just the workforce that's attracting businesses to Vietnam.
What else is there?
Well, there are several factors, actually. For one, Vietnam has been strategically securing trade deals that open up global markets.
That makes sense, getting those products out there.
Right. And on top of that, foreign investment is pouring in, fueling growth across various industries.
So they're really setting themselves up for success.
Absolutely. And let's not forget their booming export market.
Yeah, they're producing everything from textiles to electronics,
You
right?
got it. And they're even becoming a major player in renewable energy, manufacturing components for solar and wind power.
It's amazing how diversified their economy is becoming.
It really is. They're not just riding the wave, they're creating their own tide.
Now, speaking of changes, our sources also highlighted a significant shift happening in Vietnam.
Oh, you mean the rapid urbanization?
Exactly. They're moving beyond the image of rice paddies and towards bustling urban centers.
It's a transformation happening at an incredible pace.
So for someone looking to source products from Vietnam,
hmm
what are the implications of this urbanization?
Well, it means we're seeing the development of concentrated manufacturing hubs and thriving tech centers,
So where are these hubs primarily located?
mostly in Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi.
Makes sense, the major cities.
Right. And this urbanization makes it much easier for businesses to connect with reliable suppliers who have access to skilled labor and resources.
So it's streamlining the sourcing process.
Exactly. And with this modernization comes a rapidly developing infrastructure, making it much more efficient to transport goods.
It sounds like they're building the perfect ecosystem for sourcing.
They really are. They're laying the groundwork for long-term success.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the economic landscape, right?
You're right. Culture plays a huge role as well.
Yeah, our sources emphasize the strong importance of family and personal relationships in Vietnamese culture.
Yes, it's a fundamental aspect of their society, and it extends to the business world as well.
So how does that impact someone coming from a different culture who wants to do business in Vietnam?
Well, building trust and personal rapport is
Uh,
crucial.
So it's not just about signing contracts, it's about forming genuine connections.
Exactly. It's not uncommon for business meetings to extend beyond the boardroom, spilling into family dinners or social gatherings.
It's like you're joining a family rather than just doing business.
That's a great way to put it. Nurturing these relationships is key to success in Vietnam.
Now, another aspect of Vietnamese culture that our sources highlighted is their emphasis on direct communication.
Yes, they value straightforwardness and clarity.
It's interesting because I was reading that subtlety doesn't really translate well in Vietnam.
Haha, you're right. Beating around the bush is not the way to go.
So how should someone approach communication when working with Vietnamese partners?
It's best to be upfront about your needs and expectations.
So no need to sugarcoat things.
Exactly. Vietnamese professionals appreciate transparency.
It sounds refreshing in a way, cutting through the fluff and getting straight to the point.
It certainly can be. And it helps build a foundation of trust and mutual respect.
I can see how that would be valuable in a business partnership.
Absolutely. And it's another reason why Vietnam is such a compelling place to do business.
Well, it seems like Vietnam has a lot to offer businesses looking to source products.
It does. And there's a lot more to explore in terms of practical considerations and ethical sourcing practices.
Well, I'm definitely intrigued to learn more.
Great. We'll dive into those aspects in the next part of our deep dive. Yeah, it's a fascinating blend of cultural values and practical approaches.
Now, while we're on the topic of culture, I'm reminded of something else the sources mentioned.
What's that?
They describe Vietnamese businesses as having this unseen superpower.
Oh, you mean their resilience?
Exactly. They even shared a story about Typhoon Yagi back in September.
Yeah, that was quite a storm.
Apparently, it hit Vietnam with winds of 160 kilometers per hour, but they bounce back incredibly fast.
It's remarkable, isn't it? They don't dwell on setbacks, they just find solutions and move forward.
It's a pretty inspiring attitude to have.
It is, and this resilience is deeply ingrained in their business culture.
So how does that translate to working with Vietnamese partners?
Well, you can expect them to be incredibly resourceful and adaptable.
They're problem solvers, basically.
Exactly, and they maintain a positive outlook even when faced with challenges.
I like that. Okay, so we've covered the economic boom, the cultural landscape, but what about the practical side of sourcing in Vietnam? What are some things someone needs to consider before jumping in?
That's a great question. One crucial aspect is the legal framework.
Right, of course.
Vietnam has specific laws and regulations surrounding foreign investment, labor practices, and environmental standards.
So it's essential to be aware of those regulations.
Absolutely. And speaking of regulations, we can't overlook quality control.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Vietnam has a growing reputation for producing high-quality goods, but like with any sourcing destination, it's important to have robust quality assurance processes in place.
So what would that look like practically? How can someone ensure the quality of the products they're sourcing?
Well, first and foremost, thorough supplier vetting is essential.
So don't just go with the first supplier you find.
Exactly. Do your due diligence. Check their track records, certifications, and client testimonials.
What about actually visiting the factory? Is that recommended?
It's highly recommended. Seeing the production process firsthand can provide valuable insights into their quality control measures.
Makes sense. Now, the sources also briefly mentioned factory audits.
Ah, yes. Those are crucial for responsible sourcing.
I'm not entirely sure what they entail, though. Can you elaborate?
Sure. Factory audits are independent assessments that evaluate a factory's compliance with ethical and social standards.
What kind of standards are we talking about?
Things like labor practices, working conditions, and environmental impact.
So it's about ensuring that workers are treated fairly and the environment is protected.
Precisely. There are various internationally recognized audit standards you can look for.
Could you give us some examples?
Sure. There's SA 8000, which focuses on fair labor practices, and the Business Social Compliance Initiative, or BSCI, which covers a broader range of ethical aspects.
So choosing suppliers who are audited and certified by reputable organizations is a good step.
Absolutely. It helps ensure your supply chain aligns with your ethical values.
It sounds like responsible sourcing requires a multifaceted approach.
It does. You need to consider legal compliance, quality control, and ethical practices.
And all while navigating cultural nuances and building those strong relationships we talked about.
Exactly. It's what makes sourcing in Vietnam both challenging and rewarding.
Yeah, it's definitely not a simple process.
It requires careful planning, research, and a genuine commitment to doing business ethically.
So it's not something to just jump into without doing your homework.
Definitely not. It's a dynamic market, but it requires a strategic and informed approach.
All right, so for our listeners who are intrigued by the possibilities of sourcing in Vietnam, what are some key takeaways they should keep in mind as they embark on this journey?
Well, I think first and foremost, embrace the cultural nuances.
Yes, we talked about that. It's so important.
It is. Remember that relationships matter. Invest the time to build trust and rapport with your Vietnamese partners.
And be prepared for some direct communication.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's their style. And it can actually be really refreshing once you get used to it.
Definitely. It cuts through the noise and helps build clarity.
Exactly. And in terms of more practical advice, I'd say be prepared, do your research.
Understand the legal landscape right.
Yes. And make sure you prioritize ethical sourcing practices.
Absolutely. And of course, logistics are always important.
Oh, for sure. Vietnam's infrastructure is developing rapidly, but you still need a solid plan in place to ensure smooth transportation of your goods.
So it's a combination of cultural sensitivity, practical know-how, and a commitment to responsible business practices.
You got it. And honestly, that's what makes sourcing in Vietnam both challenging and rewarding.
Because it's not just a simple transaction, it's a whole process.
It is. It requires careful planning, research, and a genuine commitment to doing business ethically.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, from the economic boom to the cultural dynamics, and then diving into the practical aspects of sourcing.
Yeah, we've explored a lot. Hopefully our listeners now have a better understanding of what it takes to succeed in sourcing from Vietnam.
It's been a really insightful deep dive. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure. And to our listeners, remember, sourcing in Vietnam is a journey, not a destination.
Love that. It's not a quick fix. It requires a long-term vision.
Right. So embrace the challenges, stay informed, build those strong relationships, and the rewards will be well worth the effort.
Fantastic advice. And for our listeners, if you're eager to learn more about sourcing in Vietnam, check out the resources we've linked in the show notes.
Yes, there's a lot of great information there.
You'll find links to organizations specializing in ethical sourcing, details on Vietnam's trade agreements, tips on navigating the legal landscape.
And if you're ready to take the next step and explore your sourcing options, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
We're here to help you connect with the right partners and make informed decisions.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
See you in the next deep dive, everyone.